Welcome back to Chronicles of a Therapist. I am sitting with Minister Christine Harrell, who is a life coach, a pastor, a counselor, and all of the wonderful things. And most importantly, my mom joining us for this next episode. So, our last episode, we were talking about the emotionalness of women and how that, as a woman, we miss out on being able to identify and be okay with our emotionalness. And then piggybacking off of that, how does that play? How do you think that plays the flip side for men, like with their emotional neglect, like and their inability to express?
I think for men, just keep in mind, the male imitates the father, the female imitates the mother. However, in woundedness, the female relates to her biological father, and the male relates to his biological mother in relationships, right? So if a man doesn't have the basis of emotional health, good emotional health, if you have a distant, disengaged, abandoned father for a man, he's either going to reproduce what he sees because it's normal, or he's going to get the help to reinvent himself.
Absolutely.
To be something different, right? And so I think for a man, as a woman, everybody wants to be heard.
Absolutely.
And I think it's harder for us to communicate based on our woundedness.
Yeah.
So a woman would bring to the table, just for instance, if her mother was passive, right, and she seen her mother be abused, then she's going to be either super angry, super aggressive,
Or very docile and passive.
or very docile and passive. So I think couples, when we integrate, we get together, we have to know each other's background.
Yes, I agree.
You
with
have
that.
to know where the person you're with is coming from and where you are coming from. So when things happen in explosion, not that you excuse it, you have a better understanding. Oh, this is why this person is like that. Yeah. And we don't come to relationships honestly. We come right with fake. We come with our best self, our best representation. So we never get a chance to know, oh, this is why you're like that. Oh, this is why you're like that. That's why when I do couples, I always do them separately first.
Because you have to give them that space. I think it's interesting too, like just thinking about that. I thought about my brother, my middle brother, and his biological father and that relationship. And then my dad came in as a stepdad and as a father figure. So I talked about last episode how blended we are, right?
Right.
And so I think about primarily my middle brother because he has a biological father that relationship is strained, but then he has a stepfather who stepped in and taught him how to save, how to be a great taught him all these things, right? And so I think about, then I look at my middle brother because he's a father, right, of boys and he has a daughter or daughters or whatever. So I look at how his relationship with you has also transpired in his wife. And so I look at that representation of how the emotional neglect or how we were raised now begot our relationships.
Exactly.
And so I think I agree with you when it comes to dating. There's a level of vulnerability that has to happen when dating and being able to really, really know yourself so that when you get married, you have children with somebody else, you have that understanding of, like, for instance, me, because my father is super emotionally unavailable, I have always tended to date men who are like that. So I have an emotionally unavailable father, but a superly emotional, close relationship with my mom. And so I saw that manifest in like, man, I'm just dating people with no, like, just how are you a therapist and you just dating people with no emotions? Like, but for me, it was a level of comfort because I am very emotional, even though I have this hard exterior. I'm an emotional overthinker, right? And so you look at how that affects us and how we interact and how we have conversations. What do you think, or how do you think as an adult, if you're dating, you talked about couples, so I'm going to ask, what would you say to couples for them to be able to learn how to connect with each other? From even somebody who's wounded, like what would be the first step for somebody to say, I got all of this emotional neglect baggage but I want to be a better version. I want to be able to connect with my partner and express. What would you say to an individual who's like maybe doing a couple counseling, or what would you say to them?
I think the first thing is safety. I think the vulnerability doesn't happen because on both platforms, we haven't had a safe place to be, right? And so for me, I always try to get couples not to sling mud. So if this person unleashes some vulnerability and some woundedness, you're not allowed to use that to hurt them. You have to maintain safety.
Absolutely.
And I think the same thing goes for the man. And I think when we get to be safe with each other, our relationships change.
That's true.
But it takes a level of somebody in the relationship being vulnerable enough to say, hey, okay, this is my backdrop, this is my background, and I promise to the best of my ability, I'm not going to use what we say against each other because the world is built on the betrayal, right? That's why we keep stuff secret. That's why we're so private. The betrayal of how I was raised. And you'll be surprised that most relationships are coupled with people who have basically the same background.
Yeah.
We kind of draw each other in our woundedness, right? And so for me, the first step is a person wants to feel safe. That little girl, that little boy still wants to remain safe.
Yeah.
And so here's the other part. When I realize that my partner cannot hold my safety, now you become an ally, right? You don't become the lover.
Right.
You don't become the one I'm madly in love with. You become the ally. And so this is where the conflict comes in relationships. We're both allies. I don't care if you're in the same home, have the same mindset when it comes to finances. But if the emotional part of safety is not in play, right? What's the trigger word we don't do? What's the thing that triggers me, right? And I would always suggest couples to do therapy individually. You can't be your better person. And even if you do therapy, then you have a groundwork to know my reaction to you cannot be from my dysfunction.
It can't be. I can't be as reactive.
I can't be as reactive. And so I think on every level, that relationship piece, if it's going to last, it can't last in toxicity. It just can't. It won't. It's self-destructive to both your children. It's self-destructive on every level. And so for me, the safety of a relationship.
I think that is spot on.
Because think about it.
That's
Fear
great.
is rooted in not being safe.
Yep.
Flight, or freeze. When we're not safe, we run, we fight, or we get
protect
frozen.
ourselves.
We protect ourselves at all costs.
And I think even in relationships, we don't realize how we have grown from survival, right? So if I've never felt safe emotionally,
Right.
I have created I'm not like I have these walls up that I'm not going to let anybody permeate. I don't care if I'm with you or not, because you can't see me in my raw state, and I can't be vulnerable because you're going to hurt me.
Exactly.
And I think that ability to find safety first, I think that safety has to come from yourself. And I think that is a journey that I'm learning, like, it's okay to be vulnerable. You teach everybody else how to be vulnerable, but you can be vulnerable, right? And so I think safety is that foundational thing, but I really think that the safety has to start within yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
You have
the security
to be able,
and the safety.
You got to, because
for
you're
my
not going
own
to be able
self,
to do it
meaning
with somebody else.
And I say this all the time. It's okay not to be okay.
Yep.
To say that I'm not okay and it's okay.
Right.
But it's not okay to remain not okay, if that makes any sense. And so I think I'm learning a lot about me in this season of insecurity, right? Because safety comes from being secure. Secure internally comes from dealing with my insecurities, right? And I think we don't really look at them. We dress them up.
Yes. We paint
that picture.
Yeah.
We wear that mask. And so at every level, I have to become safe within me to know that if I'm living out of those walls of protection and I truly want to be loved, then I have to be able to tear my own walls down.
Absolutely.
And say, you know what, I'm able, I'm valid. I'm valued and worth the love that I so want.
Yes.
In a way that's going to cause me to grow, right?
Yeah.
And to become the morph. Because I think good relationships help each other transform.
I agree with that.
And we morph into different individuals, right? It doesn't always take the same pace, right? But I want to be with somebody who's going to build me, not tear me down. And I think if you live in protection and fear, you're going to tear another individual down because insecurity is going to be so great.
Yep.
I have to normalize my lessness,
Yep.
right? My least of how I think about myself. So I have to bring you down so that when I'm thinking about myself low, you got to be just as low as me.
Yep.
Right? And that's really what insecurity does. It makes you lower so I feel better.
Right. And I think when I think in that safety within myself is the reality that there are no perfect people.
None.
And so if I can break my walls down, I need to have the reality and the realization that whoever that person is, whether it's a family member, whether it's your intimate part, whoever it is, they aren't perfect. And so they might hurt you. People might hurt you. But the reality is, if I'm a safe person, I can build myself up. If you have a relationship with God, or you can find ways to restore that hurt versus living in that fear of,
exactly,
I'm going to get hurt because he, and so when we look at relationships, like a lot of times I feel like relationships are transformative if they're healthy and they can make you grow. But if I haven't done that work myself, I can't decide to get into a relationship hoping that person and their love is going to heal me. And I think as an adult, even if that's not in the forefront of our conversation or thought process, that is a societal norm. I'm going to be with somebody and I'm going to just be better. No.
Exactly. It goes back to codependency.
Absolutely.
I need you to need me.
Right.
And I need you to want me. And from that need, I think love is going to some kind of magically way come.
Right.
And it doesn't.
And I don't even think just the concept of, for me, love comes from trust and safety.
Right.
And being able to communicate. And somebody who can be open and honest about them, and even in their mess and their hurt. Like when I can see somebody in that and live in their authentic truth, that's for me where love starts. Because I can see like, you might be all put together, but you're just human like me. Like, you still struggling like me. So for the person that I am, that's going to make me want to love you. And all right, let's do that transformative together. Because I see you're, not to fix it, not like, oh, I got to do it so I can fix it, but you're being vulnerable so I can be vulnerable type thing. And I think a lot of relationships are missing that piece of what is the internal thing I need to do for me. For like personally, I know that I'm not vulnerable, and people who know me know how unvulnerable I am. Like people close to me know how vulnerable I am. I'm a big soft teddy bear. My mom tells me this all the time. You're such a big soft teddy bear. But to the outside world, they don't see that. And for me, I will share a lot of the reasons is because I've always helped people.
Right.
And when you're a helper or a healer, people want to draw from you, even when you don't want them to. So if I'm guarded, people can't unintentionally hurt me from their stuff. For me being, okay, well, we could talk about it. Like people pull on you, right? And so for me, I know that that's a part of who Cass is, but I'm very, very strategic in who I let in my life to let my guards down. And I think that's a part of growth and transformation in relationships. I've learned that in this new season of dating, like there are emotionally available guys out here who can be honest and open. And that's like, I didn't know that existed. What?
Now, I'm just the flip side. I'm fully vulnerable and transparent.
She's too vulnerable and transparent. Way.
But my relationship with God has helped me heal to know that I don't have to hide being me. Right. Because God loves me when other people don't. And I always tease people. I think, and then let's talk about capacity for a minute. Right. I know I'm this big bucket full of person. Like, done the work, just love people hard, real open, real transparent. The challenge is, though, understanding that I can still be me. Well, I can't be me to people who are thimble size. That carrot cup, that size. And so what happens is we get with these people, right? And I got all of this stuff in me. And not saying the small cup people or don't have anything to them. They haven't found what that thing is. Yeah. And so what happens to people like me who are transparent, we still get hurt because people think we don't. Because we're trying to pour this into this small cup. And we're just being wasted. Yeah. And so the flip side is there is a balance, which I'm also learning. That you can't be open 24/7. You can't be transparent 24/7
Mm-hmm.
because the reality is people don't get it,
Yeah.
right? And so then you deal with the rejection
Mm-hmm.
and then you tend to worry, second guess yourself, like, am I really right? And so I think there's a balance for transparency and vulnerability, but I still think there's a healing process
Mm-hmm.
that has to happen in order to get to there.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that is the hardest part, I think, in our adult world is how do you become vulnerable in a safe space
Right.
and being able to identify some people can present like they are a safe space. People can present like, but where do you find that balance of vulnerability? Where does that, and so I will tell people like outside of being comfortable, sometimes it's not always in an intimate relationship.
Right.
I believe that if you have those close friendships,
Exactly.
those, and when I mean close friendships, I mean people who have kind of been through some stuff with you. You can be your authentic, raw cut
Right.
self. I'm not talking about people who this is my best friend from high school, and no, I'm talking about those people who, I mean, raw, uncensored, undone, those people who have been with you, who have held you accountable, who have poured into you, who have loved on you. Those are the easiest places to be vulnerable
And be safe.
and be safe because they have seen that. They haven't just seen you at the top, the pinnacle, the good. They've seen those hard parts and they didn't judge you and they loved on you from there. I think if we can learn how to be vulnerable there, that can absolutely translate to being in a relationship. And sometimes,
Exactly. And sometimes it's not a significant other.
sometimes
It's somebody you meet randomly
I agree with that.
who you can talk to and find out like, wow, you get it, right? I have a new woman I've just met recently, and our first encounter was like, wow,
Yeah.
she gets it. Like she's just open and transparent, right? And I'm like, wow. And we kind of do some of the same things, and so, but the part that we really have to get to, there's no way you can be in any kind of relationship and not be hurt.
Yes.
You just can't.
It's impossible.
Because hurt people, and a lot of us have not done the work enough to not know how to poke the bear, if you will.
Yeah. But I won't just say hurt people. I believe more often than not as well, people can hurt you because of your own lenses and viewpoints, right?
Yeah, I agree
so
with that.
if
your perspectives.
if I'm the type of person who is very closed off and I decide to open up and somebody, if I don't feel like they interact with me right and I'm more closed off, I can be hurt, but they didn't do anything wrong. It's my perception. Right. It's my own.
That's good.
And so I think, yes, hurt people do hurt people. So I'm just go ahead
so
and say.
Let's change that though. A person's perspectives, right?
Yeah.
And that's another thing though. You can't change them.
No.
So like you have to learn to maneuver to be you authentically regardless of what people think.
Yeah. But I think the other part of that too is we have learned when you are an authentic person, some people will be offended because of your authenticity.
Exactly.
But what me and my mom have learned is even in that, I'm still going to be me. It might have offended you or you might have felt away. What we can do is have an effective conversation. And sometimes, and I've told clients this, some people are just going to not get you.
That's it.
And that's okay. That doesn't mean that they're a bad person. That just means you are not at the capacity to understand. Exactly. And we're going to always miss it. And I don't think there's a lot of conversations about just the concept that sometimes people just think differently and are so fixated on how they think that y'all are always going to get into it. But what happens, this is random, but what happens when that happens and you're married to this person or you're in a long-term relationship with this person and you guys get to that revelation like, we're missing it. We're always, our perceptions are off or I got unprocessed trauma or whatever the case may be. How do we navigate? Because I think a lot of people are going through that in their intimate relationships where they feel trapped or stuck because we are different people.
And this is one of the things that is the greatest revelation for myself. I'm only responsible for me. I can only be I can't control another individual. So somewhere, I had to learn this personally, I have to be able to be healthy enough, right? To know what I need and what I don't need,
Yeah.
right? To know what I desire, how a person should treat me and not treat me, how to set healthy boundaries for another individual. But at the end of the day, it's a decision that needs to be made.
Absolutely.
Seriously. If I'm with someone, I don't care how long, I don't care how many kids, if I'm with someone who is toxic to my soul, right? And I don't have the capacity anymore to endure the toxicity, then I need to make a decision. I don't need to wait for you to make a decision. I don't need to wait for you to change, right? Unless I've grown and have the patience, right? And God is helping me with that process.
Right.
That I need to make a decision, right? And I understand, as a Christian, as a minister, I understand the depths of what we don't believe in divorce. But so many times I had to learn personally that the reason why we connect to get married is in toxicity. It's in dysfunction. It's saying what you just said earlier. I just need somebody to love me.
Right.
And I'm not going to come into who I am fully to know that I have that value. I'm just going to keep on staying in it and getting in and out of it until I find it, which says I still don't know who I am and what I want. One of the things I think basis on needs, I do an assessment called needs. If I looked at all the needs that I needed met as a child, and I did not get them from a biological parent, I go into my adult relationships and think that these needs should be fulfilled by this individual. And that is the most unrealistic way to relate. And they're unrealistic, unspoken needs.
Yes, I agree.
And then you're angry and resentful because I don't know what I need.
Right.
And I think you should know what I need.
But how can somebody else know what you need?
Exactly.
If
you don't know what you need.
It does go back to knowing yourself and knowing what are those things. And I think even in relationships, knowing the importance of what is it that I need? Like, what does that look like? And so when we think about relationships and childhood neglect, and I feel like the basis of our society, what people have to learn is that we have to do the work for ourselves. We have to know what are our struggles, what are the things that I need to. And another thing, and we'll wrap up with this, is how do I sit with myself? How do I sit with myself, learn how to be vulnerable, learn how to keep myself safe, learn what it is that I need. And I will say a big way to learn how to do that is to seek therapy. Because a lot of times if you don't have the skill set or you're not able, I know people who can't even sit with themselves at all. Yeah. And so the best way, as Council Awareness April is, the best way to kind of explore that is to find a therapist and begin to sit in a safe space and learn how to effectively communicate and explore your emotions and be able to identify what your emotions are. The best way to learn how to do that is to find therapy. Is to find a therapist.
And let me just add something that I do often, is journaling. We are in a society that we do not like to read and we do not like to write.
Absolutely.
But in order to know what I think and what I feel,
you have to stop and do it.
Right. Remember we used to keep these, what we used to call them back in the day, with your private information was in.
The books, the little directory.
Yes. But I think sitting with yourself and saying, I am feeling this. I am thinking this. For me, I really do it when I'm emotional. I don't know what the emotion is. Mm-hmm. I have to sit with myself and meditate, like, what's really going on with me?
Yeah.
And the flip side for me is I have a relationship with God. So then that other piece for me is, okay, God, what do you see? What do you know? Because I think before we get to therapy, if you just don't know, start writing.
Yeah.
Start writing. For me, it has changed.
She's a writer too. So I'm going to go ahead and pair that. She wrote books. Let's talk about that as we close. She's a writer. So it's easier for her to write because she's always wrote poetry and she's always wrote stuff. Some people still will struggle with that, but I definitely think that's a great way to explore.
They have prompts.
Yeah, it's a great way to start and then maybe possibly find a therapist. Mom, tell us how we can find you. Talk about your book.
Okay, the book is Aches of the Soul, Jesus Make Whole. It's kind of a memoir, but it's also kind of an interactive book talking about the wounds of your soul, what has happened to you in childhood, and how can you get out of it. That's on actually Amazon Kindle. You can reach me at Zoe Life on Facebook platform or zoe.lifevelc@gmail.com. You'll be able to find me there. I am a life coach and I do sessions one-on-one. I interactive teach. I do a lot of life coaching and inner healing workshops. So find me there.
Thank you so much for sitting with me. I appreciate you. And thank you guys for kind of sitting in on these are our conversations.
All the time.
And in closing, please allow your passion to fulfill your purpose. You can contact me at @CiaChef_Chronicles or on Instagram. And catch you guys on the next episode. Thanks for listening.